to this chat installation with the lovely Carol Robertson and the English sisters. Hello, Carol.
Hello. And today we're talking about communication.
Definitely. It's very important, isn't it? Communication, how we communicate.
It's very interesting.
It's very interesting.
It is, because it can make such a difference to all of our lives. You know, if we're communicating in the right way or in maybe just a little bit of the wrong way without realising it.
Yeah. And
I have a thing where I don't think of anything as the right way or the wrong way.
Well, that's a good way to think.
That's excellent, yeah.
So, and especially it was something that I did when I was making art and inventing things. And I think it's what made me a good inventor, because everything that happened I saw as an outcome. And so I would look at it and I'd go, okay, bit of rewind. What happened? What did I do? What was the process I went through to arrive at this? You know, what was my strategy? And then I got this. So it might be that it was all bubbly and I had wanted a nice clean line. So instead of getting very angry and frustrated and saying, oh, that was wrong, I just said to myself, I was like, interesting outcome. And then, you know, maybe 10 years later, when I wanted bubbly, I knew exactly how to get bubbly. You know, I could go back in my mind and go, okay, I know what to do to get that. And I find it's the same with language and also our behaviours. So, you know, sometimes we do something, you know, with a human being or with an animal or something like that, and the response that we get is not the one that we expected. And so if we respond in that same way of just going like, oh, how interesting, then we've got the flexibility of perhaps we would want that again some other time, you know, maybe working with a client or with a partner or whatever. And if we don't want it at that time, then it's a case of just going, okay, I'm going to change what I do and do something different to get a different response. So I pretty much take out the words.
You're always learning from your behaviour. Is that what you're trying to say, or what you're saying?
Yeah, I don't use the labels right and wrong very often. You know, I usually just use helpful or unhelpful or oh, how interesting, because it might be useful later on.
Yeah, that's better. That is helpful,
Well,
actually. Not using right and wrong is actually helpful.
Well, imagine if we were all brought up that way.
Yeah.
You know, to be taught right from when we were little, instead of saying that's wrong, saying that, is that helpful?
Yeah,
that's not helpful.
No.
Is that unhelpful? Is it useful? Is it not useful?
Excellent. Yeah, that would be a different way of growing up.
Well, it would be a different way of looking at the world as well, wouldn't it? You'd see it through different eyes if you didn't have right and wrong.
Well, you would. Yes, you would indeed.
You
would, yeah.
I suppose it's an extension of what the neutral observer does, because that's an internal way of doing that as well.
Yeah.
So there's no judgment. There's just you know, the neutral observer's like the hey, you're doing a video, or hey, you're doing some auditory, or look at your kinesthetic. Would you like to look at your kinesthetic? And then that opal fruit comes out and says, you know, is it helpful? So again, there's no judgment. There's no right or wrong. It's just, is it helpful? And then one of the things that's fascinating on top of that is that we all, if we think of all those associations that we make, you know, all those memories that we refer to, which are a bit like doing a Google search. You know, we sort of do you know, how hard is it going to be to do that? If we say to ourselves, how hard is it going to be to do this? Then it's like a Google search. It'll find all the hard ways of doing it. Or if we say to ourselves, what would be the easy way of doing this? It's going to go off and find all the easy ways for us to do it.
Yeah.
But we all, because we build up these associations all the time, we all have a very different way of viewing the world. So for one person, you know, the colour red, if I think of the colour red, I can think of, you know, like when I was a kid, I had a little racing car that was red that you could sit on. It was like a big plastic tube with black wheels. And you could use it like a cannon, virtually tear around the house and smash into everything. It was kind of indestructible. And so for me, when I think about red, it comes up as very strong. You know, it's in my file on red. And then I've got all the different reds of being an artist, literally thousands of different reds. So I have all the words for it. So I have words that come up like cadmium or vermilion, and then when that joins on to different artists, and so it's an enormous, if we mapped it out, it would be an enormous thing. Whereas for another person, red might mean something completely different.
Well, it might mean danger.
It might mean a red bus.
Red boots that we had when we were little.
We had these red boots, yeah. They're really cute, yeah.
Yeah, we never forget. They have, yes, it does mean different things.
It definitely does, yeah.
And it's strange with colours, isn't it?
So, so when we're communicating with people, it's very interesting to think that the way they're thinking and experiencing the world is completely different from the way that we're experiencing it. I might be looking at something red thinking, oh, that's vermilion. And if I bought that as a pigment, it would cost me, whatever, an ounce. Whereas they might be looking at it and thinking about some awful thing that happened to them. They might think it's like blood or something.
Yeah. They've got anchors to different things.
Definitely, yes.
We've attached meanings to it,
Yeah.
to the colour.
And that's something very important, I think, for us all to realise that what we see may not be what somebody else is seeing, or what we perceive may not be what they perceive, or it isn't what they perceive.
And also lots of social labels on behaviours, whether things are right or wrong. The right or wrong thing.
Well, you sort of think if you don't say right or wrong, you're not even going to be able to be understood.
Yeah.
I mean, now that you said we can use helpful or unhelpful, but
that's very liberating, isn't
that
it?
kind of terminology doesn't even that's why I said a little bit wrong, because I didn't even really want to say the word wrong, but I didn't have an alternative.
Yeah.
And, it is very useful to say unhelpful.
Yeah.
Because if it's not helpful to you, it's not going to be a good thing, is it? Then I suppose you say there's no good and bad either, would you, or not? You'd say that was unhelpful or helpful too, maybe.
Yeah, I tried to stick to helpful or not helpful. I tried to frame things in that framework, or often I just go, how interesting. So say I'm working with a horse, and the horse suddenly starts rearing up or running towards me or something like happened the other day. And I'm like, oh, how interesting. What did I do that caused that to happen? So then I can kind of map it back. So I just take a moment and go, what did I do? Map it back and discover what I did. And I just got what had happened that day was I got a bit excited. Lost control of my state and got a bit excited.
So when you say map it back, you go back in your thoughts to see what happened. You go back in your memory.
Yeah, I sort of I rewind what I just did. So I kind of make a little video of what I just did. Where was my energy? What was I doing? Where were my arms?
It's very useful.
Was I shifting? What was I looking at? Was I staring at his face, or was I looking at his? Was I looking away? And then I know the strategy of how I got that result.
Excellent. So when if you're talking to someone and they suddenly flare up at you and get really angry, instead of feeling angry yourself and shouting back, you can think, oh, how interesting.
Yeah.
And then it really quickly in your mind, see what posture you were in. Perhaps you were in quite an aggressive posture like this, or perhaps you were standing in such a way as to cause that reaction. So it can be very helpful, can't it?
Yeah.
But sometimes it's not always you.
Sometimes it's not you, it's just what they're going through, but sometimes it can be you. Sometimes it can.
In a communication, that's what communication is, isn't it? We're all it's like we're making sometimes I think it's like a kaleidoscope.
Yeah.
We're making a pattern, an abstract pattern, and then that's what I love about personal change. So if you start changing yourself, the pattern is changed.
Of course.
Yeah. The outcome changes.
Yeah, I had an experience once where I was meeting with a group of people, and quite often it was a long journey before I met them, and quite often in that journey I'd be sort of thinking, one, how much the journey was costing me, and also, you know, that it was a big hassle and I was going to be late and I had to like zoom. So my head was really full of myself.
Yeah.
And then when I would arrive and meet everybody, you know, everybody would be friendly, but, I don't know, just ordinarily friendly. And then one day I made the journey and I was really deeply thinking about one of the members of the group and, you know, sort of worrying a bit about them. And then I started thinking about another member of the group and thinking about what was going on in their life. And then, I don't know, I just was thinking like that. And so when I went into the meeting room, it was really odd. Everybody gave me a huge cuddle and, you know, and I was actually sort of thinking like, wow, like, do they think it's my birthday, or is something wrong with me, or has somebody died, or, you know, what are they going to tell me next? It was really emotional response and it was lovely. It was really, really lovely. It was really like something I knew from me that I'd never experienced. So I did that whole thing of going like, oh, how interesting. And once I sat down, I sort of rewound it, and actually I rewound it right to the point, you know, where, you know, I had kind of got on the plane or something. And I realised that what I'd been doing is, instead of thinking about myself, I'd been thinking about them. And I think they all picked it up. So it sort of shifted so something energetically or in my body posture, and that's something I think as well, you see, that was without language.
Yes.
So I'm not convinced that language makes communication more elegant or more what's the word for it? More smooth. Sometimes I think language. So it's like, for instance, say we do one of these sort of normal social interactions, normal communications, where somebody says to you, "How are you?" You meet somebody and they go, "How are you?"
Yeah.
And you go, "Oh, you know, I feel good," or a lot of people just go, "Fine, I'm fine." But if there was no language there and we all just met each other and we calibrated each other and kind of observed each other and looked at what was going on, you know, like what was the person doing with their, you know, what was their face like, whether was their mouth smiling and their eyes sad or whatever. You know, it was like a client I was speaking to the other day, you know, he was saying that, you know, he's been, you know, considering, you know, suicide and things like that, but that nobody around about him would know, because he just says he's okay. But in fact, if we were animals, or if we didn't have language, would we not notice more?
Well, we would be more tuned in, wouldn't we?
I think we would all learn to observe more.
Well, I think it's also a question of commodity in our busy lifestyles. A lot of people have very busy lifestyles nowadays, and they've got so much internal chatter going on that their whole heads are filled with that, with their own problems, or if they've got to sort other people's problems out, they feel as if they have to. And when they actually meet people, they're not really there for the person, so it's almost just like you go into automatic pilot and you say, "How are you?" but you're not really expecting them to pour their hearts out and say, "Oh, actually, I'm really feeling awful, you know, I was thinking of killing myself yesterday." You know, the person that, and the person that you're talking to feels that as well, so it doesn't even, you know, come into their minds to even share that with you. They just know that you're sort of not there for them.
They can sense it.
They can sense it, can't they?
Whereas perhaps if there was no communication and people would just observe one another.
Well, if there was no language.
No language, no language.
And no kind of right and wrong way of, you know, there's a social nicety of, if somebody asks you how you are, then you're meant to say, "I'm okay."
Yeah, you are.
It was just a non-verbal communication.
Yeah.
Well, what would happen?
You would have to sit and observe a lot more.
That people would have to observe each other a lot more. Yeah, you'd probably learn a lot about that person. You know, I can just imagine how interesting that would be, just observing somebody.
Well, that's what we do as well in our careers.
We
in
do
our
it a
careers,
lot,
we learn how to observe the person for what they really are. You know, not just to look at the surface, because people just look at people, but they're not really looking at them. They're just, you know, they're just they're just grabbing the language that's coming out of and latching onto that, and they're not even really looking behind the language. Because behind each phrase that is said, there's a whole load of meaning that hasn't been being communicated. So
Well, sometimes I think the language just goes on another channel. So going back to the neutral observer, you know, if you think about, you know, you're running, so you might be saying to somebody, "Oh, you know, I feel really good," and you might be playing a video of last time you saw them, and you might be like hearing what somebody else said about them, or they might give you a particular kind of feeling in your body. It might make you feel really good. You might think, oh, I feel great. Or even like the smell and the taste. You might be a particular. We probably don't even pick that up. But all that's going on while we say these kind of labels, aren't they? They're kind of. It's almost like the language is just kind of going on at a different level.
It is.
The language does limit us a lot.
It does.
Because it does put frames around things. And what you said before about right and wrong, that there's a whole frame about that. And then everyone's got a perception of it, because say if a child was say like hit when they did something wrong, the wrong and the hitting is going to be attached together, and every time that they get something wrong themselves, or someone says that's wrong, they're going to have a really violent reaction in their body of unease and unpleasant memories. So I mean, it's a very bad thing, really, that we're doing.
It happens. I mean, I'm so aware of it because I meet so many people who say, who come here to see me, and they look at all the art on the walls and they go, wow, it's amazing, and then I say I made the art, and then they're like, oh wow, that's amazing, and I go, well, you can make art too, and they're like, no, and I go, why do you know that? And they basically were told by some teacher when they were 5, or by some other kid, oh, that's rubbish.
Yeah.
And then they just stopped doing it.
They form that belief. Yeah, it doesn't take long. Very quick.
So how can we change this? We can change this by in all of our lives every day. The viewers, if they're willing to start changing even just the words right and wrong to helpful and not helpful. Or unhelpful.
That's a beginning.
That's
a very good beginning. It's a good start.
Even for
it would be good next time we talk to each other to talk about language, because we also don't really observe what we're saying. I'm fascinated by language, and I sometimes don't notice what I'm saying, or when I do that rewind thing, where I go, oh, how interesting, then I think, well, what did I say? Did I say to my husband, you need to tidy up?
Yeah.
And then you can see him, he's like, so no way, does that happen,
Well, that's with a lot of our clients as well. We'll say things like, and you said that you felt as if you had a sack of potatoes. So you feel as if you've got a sack of potatoes on your back, because we're picking up on what they've said, a sack of coal or whatever. No, I didn't say that. You just, we think, you just said that a second ago. No, it's just so heavy. They don't even realise they're using this language themselves.
No.
So when you're not aware of the language that you're using, it's binding. It's binding you. It can keep you in a
certain little frame. It keeps you in a frame, whatever
I'm
frame.
trying not to say bad place.
Well, no,
I've been bound.
But that's really great. So what you can do, this is the great thing about the neutral observer. You can set, you've been using your neutral observer a lot, and there's still a lot we can do that we haven't done yet on our shows. But what you can do is you can set your neutral observer for like the next week to spot every time you say bad or good.
Well, yes, that would be a good thing.
That would be very helpful for you.
Yeah.
And then, you can run. That'd be quite fun when it's saying, like, okay, so you said that as good. Is that helpful or not helpful?
Yeah.
But I quite like the word good. You see, I would find it hard. Bad I don't like, but good. I've got good feelings attached to that.
Of course, you used to see it in your little books at school and your exercise. Good, the teacher writes. Good girl. Of course you like the word good. Imagine if you wrote, that was very helpful for you, wasn't it? Question mark. How would you feel about that?
Well, that would have been nice.
That would have been even better. You would have said, oh yeah, actually was helpful for me.
Good is good. I don't believe in taking words and saying, okay, we're never going to use this word again. But it's very interesting when you start to become aware of the kind of meaning that you're assigning to. Words are labels,
They are labels.
They're labels that can limit or
enlighten. Yeah, they really are.
I suppose we use them to communicate, although we can communicate, I mean, you know what they say? They say that when you meet somebody, you know in a few seconds what you think about them.
Yeah.
So that's done through non-verbal reading
right.
of the person. And when you gain more awareness of that, then you're more, you've got a different kind of awareness of what you're doing. It was a bit like I had a client the other day, and I said to her, "Do you have pink sheets on your bed?" And she was just like, "How do you know that?" But every time she talked about being in bed, she went really pink. And I learned that from Eric Robbie. So she made the colours on her face of what she was thinking about.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So you can see. And I think we know more than we know, so we're picking all that up. But one thing that we forget is that, I remember thinking that everybody thought the same way as me, and it was a shock to discover that people were thinking in a completely different way from me.
Yeah.
No. I was chatting to somebody the other day actually, and everything was terrible, it was like, she was saying, there are, seagulls on my roof and they make a noise, and, and it's too sunny and bright and I have to pull my curtains down, and, it's just a really different way of seeing the world. Whereas if I had seagulls on my roof, I'd be thinking, I live at the seaside!
Yeah, I love seagulls.
Yeah, I know. It's fascinating to find the differences. We had this couple that came back from a holiday. And the wife, she was speaking about this holiday as though it was the best thing that ever happened to her. She said it was like they went to this desert island somewhere in Venezuela. And she was describing, she said there were these giant pelicans and it was gorgeous, and they even bathed nude, and it was the most wonderful. It sounded so romantic. Then it was hilarious because about 10 minutes later, when she went off somewhere, she went down the garden, the husband was drinking a beer. We said, "Oh, and how did you enjoy the holiday then?" He said, "Oh my God, it was horrific. This little fisherman drove us down to this desert island somewhere. We had no idea whether he was going to come back to collect us or not. The whole time I was terrified. And then afterwards, these massive birds came. They were looking really menacing. I was so worried that they might bite us or something. And it was so shocking. We were saying, was this in Venezuela?" He goes, "Yeah, Venezuela, the holiday we've just come back from." And it was so shocking. At the same holiday, the same place, and yet the two different experiences of it was shocking, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's sort of my world is not your world.
Your world, yeah. We suddenly, that really hit
my
us.
shoes are not your shoes.
Mm.
When they say the expression being my shoes.
What can we do about it? I mean, one thing that we can do about it is start to find out how other people experience the world by doing exactly what you did there. You asked.
Yeah, by asking, yeah.
So by finding out how people experience things and what they're feeling, and imagine if that was done at school.
Well, that's what should be done at school. We're a bit angry now.
Well, it would be helpful if it was done at school, that's for sure.
It would be,
very
and it would be a
helpful.
lot more interesting for the students,
Yeah.
the school children that went there. They would find it much more useful and interactive.
Well, definitely.
Okay then, Carol.
Wow.
We're saying goodbye for today.
And we'll catch up soon because
We look forward to our next chat installation.
chat installation.
And for all the viewers, a little bit of homework for you, a few tasks.
About communication.
About communication. Watch your partners.
Watch your partner's
Your
reaction.
children.
Watch your partner's reaction,
Your
because
colleagues.
you may be giving off different signs you might not be aware of. Your facial. Try and think about what's your face doing as you're saying the words. What is your face doing? If you become aware of what your face doing, then you can realise, you'll become
realise
aware.
what your body's doing too.
Well, very often, yes. I think that's.
That's one of the fun things about doing these Skype talks and working on Skype is that you get to see yourself.
Oh, it's great.
You
And
do.
the change.
Yeah, you do. You actually get to see yourself.
In a way that you don't normally, because when we go to the mirror, we put on a mirror face.
Yeah,
We do.
And make sure that mirror face is smiling, all of you out there.
Because
we know what your mirror faces are like.
we know what your mirror faces are like. Yeah.
You know, give yourself a smile in the morning. You'll notice all the difference.
You will indeed. You will indeed.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye, Carol. Bye.